Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu. It's good to see everybody here. It's good to be in Irving, Texas. What a pleasure to be with you all. I want you to know that all throughout the land, all throughout the country, we admire you. We admire the building, the construction, the engagement that you're doing right here in Texas, proving not just to the people of Texas, but to the whole country that the Muslims have a lot to contribute to this community and are doing everything we can to make it better for everyone every day. So thank you all very much, and thanks for having this important conference. We must come together, talk to each other so that we can get a better understanding. And I just want to say that as a member of Congress, as a political figure, that that we are in a critical moment in time. And I want to draw your attention to the fact that we have an opportunity to help shape this nation and the state of Texas for the better. A little further from the mic. For the better. We have an opportunity, and we should take that opportunity to make our community a better place for not just the Muslim community, but for everyone concerned. Quite frankly, for the last 10, maybe 15 years, we have been in somewhat of a defensive crouch. And of course, that's perfectly understandable. When your children can't even go to school, making a clock without getting arrested and put out of school for 3 days, without these kinds of things happening, it can make you a little bit on edge. The Muslim community, you know, when we're dealing with a national presidential candidate alienating, otherizing our community, it might put you a little bit on edge. And it's not just, this is not the first presidential season that it's happened. We all remember 4 years ago when we saw the people like Herman Cain and others doing the same kind of thing. If anything, this political rhetoric has gotten even uglier than before. But the truth is, despite this, despite all of that stuff, there are a lot of good things happening to and by the Muslim community in the United States. And in this moment, 38 days before an election, we should be thinking not about these haters who are going to do what they're going to do no matter what. We should be thinking about the contributions we can make and are making and might make in this community that we live in. And so I just want to start out by reminding us that we have a lot to offer, that we have to be good neighbors, and that we have to make an important political contribution to this community that we live in. You know, on October 11th is the last day that you can register to vote in the state of Texas. Who is registered to vote? Could you put your hands up if you registered to vote? Who could register to vote but hasn't done it yet? I don't want to embarrass anybody, but is there anybody out there? So there we got a few. Thank you for your honesty. We need to get you registered to vote and get everybody in the Masjid at this community meeting registered to vote so that we can have the maximum impact on the electorate. If you want to be able to push back on the otherizing politicians like Donald Trump and others, you're going to have to use the most effective means possible to push back on them. And in this moment, that is going to be able to vote. That's going to be voting. That's going to be using what we have, which is our right to participate in this election, to vote. Now, I want to tell you that a lot of Muslims are not really clear on what they should be doing in this particular season. And I'm not here to tell you what to do, but I am here to give you some things that you might want to consider as you move forward in making your own decision. You have to understand that it's not just Trump we're dealing with. It's Trumpism. It's not just Trump, it's Trumpism. It's the things that he brings with him. Not just him as a person, he's bad enough. But you know, what he did is inspire the likes of David Duke to run for Senate in Louisiana, your next door state. What he's doing is inspiring people at his rallies to say hateful, horrible things, not only about Muslims, but about women, about people of color, about Mexican Americans. See, he is unlocking the door to some very ugly stuff. And so we have to be the ones who are going to rise up in this moment and exercise our right to set this nation on a better path where people can be treated with respect, with dignity, and inclusion. And that's going to mean that we don't have the luxury of sitting back and saying, well, we don't think the candidates are perfect, so we're not going to vote for them. We have to say, what's the best option for our community, for Texas, and for the nation, and make the decision based on that. I would submit to you that when you cast your ballot, you are not pledging your sacred honor. You're not nominating somebody for a Nobel Prize. You're not vouching for that person's character. What you're doing is you're looking at what they say they're going to do, you're looking at what they say they're going to stand for, and you're comparing the candidates, and you are standing up to make a choice between the two of them. And I'm urging our community to make sure that we are absolutely a part of this dialogue and a part of this conversation. On the one hand, you got a candidate who is telling us that she's going to do something about climate change within the first, year or so of her service. Another one denies that it is even occurring at all. Another one says we need to raise the livable wage, raise the minimum wage to a livable wage. The other one says it's too high already. Another one says we need comprehensive immigration reform. The other one says build a wall. I'm telling you, this is not a close call, and the Muslim community cannot be missing in action on this thing. Millard Fillmore, has anybody ever heard of Millard Fillmore? Raise your hand if you heard of him. Millard Fillmore was the president back in the 1850s. He is the last person who was neither a Democrat or a Republican. This election season, only Allah knows the future, but it looks pretty clear that it's going to be one or the other. And I would submit to you that the other candidates, Jill Stein is polling less than 1%. And Gary Johnson, I don't know if you've been following the news, he doesn't know what Aleppo is, much less where it is or what's going on there. He can't name any world leader he admires. He's not a viable option. So what I'm saying to you is we got to be active and we got to be engaged. But at the same time, it is about the presidential, because the presidential sets a tone, as I mentioned. It's not only about the presidential, it is about the down ballot races as well. It is about who's going to be the mayor. It is about who's going to be your member of Congress or who is going to be in the state legislature. We need to be thinking about all these races up and down the ticket, because it is actually your mayor and your city council and your school board that is going to have some of the most direct impact on your life and the life of your family. And so you need to be thinking about these candidates too. And these candidates need to come to this space, into this Masjid, and answer your questions. That is also part of what it means to be an active citizen and make full use of your right as a citizen, and to make sure that these politicians who want to represent you are responsive to your needs, up and down the ticket. And then also understand this. The election will be over in about 38 days. But that's not really the end, that's actually the beginning. Because after that, it'll be our job to pull the people into this space and to demand that they're accountable to our community. Whether we vote for them or whether we don't, they still represent us. And it is our job, our responsibility, to make sure that they do properly represent us. But understand this too. The American system is made to be lobbied, it is made to be engaged, it is made to be pulled upon. I talk to Muslims all the time who say, well, how come the Congress doesn't do the right thing? How come they don't do the moral thing? How come they don't do the just thing? And I hate to tell you this, but the truth is, it is not a moral institution. It's also not an immoral institution. It is neither moral nor immoral. It is an institution that responds to people who make demands of it. And if you don't make demands of it, you're not going to get anything out of it. So it is very critical that we vote up and down the ticket in our interest, what is good for our community, and then after the election, we hold these people accountable. I want to tell you too, that Muslims all over this country are actively getting engaged, just like you are. Muslims all over this country, just like here in Irvine, are being a part of the political scene. I am so proud of a young lady whose name is Ilhan Omar. She ran for state legislature in Minnesota, and she won that race. This is a young lady who between the ages of 8 and 12 years old lived in a refugee camp. When she got to the United States, she barely spoke any English. She had to leave her home and go to Kenya because of the war that her country was going through in Somalia. And yet, here she is beating a 44-year incumbent, and she, in only a few days, will be the first Muslim Somali American state legislator in the United States. And so I want you to know this because I don't want you to think it's all about Trump. It's not all about Trump. It's about good things that are happening all over the place. We have seen people get elected. We have seen them run for office. We have been able to take out politicians who have said nasty, hateful, bigoted things about our community. Never forget Alan West, a member of Congress from Florida who was spewing out anti-Muslim Islamophobic comments. We actually mobilized our community and took him out of office. No longer is he the member of Congress. He's a former member of Congress, and he has us to thank for that. And I'm very proud of that particular achievement, because if we will reward you if you do what's right, and we will get rid of you if you do what's wrong. And that's the way our community should work. This is the way we're supposed to operate. So I just want to tell you this. Look, Texas, you happen to be in a very, very important state. Texas is a state that is critical across the nation, because if Texas votes, it changes the entire United States. But you should know that Texas is the state that has the lowest voter turnout in the country. Texas has the lowest voter turnout in the country. You know, I learned earlier today that there was a tax measure in Irving that passed with only 1% of the vote. But there also were city council members elected because the Muslim community decided it was going to vote even if other people didn't, and got someone elected to the council. I'm telling you that in the state of Texas, there are enough people in the Muslim community to make a meaningful difference in every city in the state of Texas. But we got to mobilize that vote. But we have to turn out that vote. We have to be having voter registration tables every single day between now and October 11th. We have to mobilize ourselves into a group in a committee that will knock on every single door and will get everybody out to the polls. You understand that if we can combine our energy with the Latino community, the African American community, the progressive white community that believes in fairness and justice and equality, if we can get with the environmental community, the people with Black Lives Matter, we can combine ourselves into a majority in the state of Texas. But we have to get out there and do it. You know, Texas is a majority-minority state. Did you know that? It is a majority-minority state right now. But the voter turnout is so low that people are still very much disenfranchised. But we in this room can resolve to do something about it. And I'm telling you, low voter turnout is a big deal. Low voter turnout is important. Has anybody ever heard of a man by the name of Paul Wierich? Raise your hand if you heard of Paul Wierich. I don't see any hands out there. It's W-E-Y-R-I-C-H. You ought to Google Paul Wierich. If you want to learn something about American politics, you ought to Google the name Paul Wierich. Why? Here's why. Because Paul Wierich started an organization called the American Legislative Exchange Council, ALEC. Whoever heard of that? I see more hands. He started something called the Heritage Foundation in Washington, D.C., which is a conservative think tank. Who's ever heard of that? He started something called the Moral Majority, which is neither moral or majority, but he started that. See, you know the name Karl Rove, and you know those other people, but Paul Wierich is one of those intellectuals who's behind the scenes pushing this conservative movement, which actually attacks our community. You ought to know what he said. You know what he said back in 1980? He said, he was talking to a group of very conservative folks, and he said, you ought to stop trying to promote voter turnout and getting everybody out to vote. In fact, our agenda, conservative agenda, the chances of it succeeding go up when the size of the electorate goes down. You know, photo ID is not an accident. Photo ID has absolutely, positively nothing to do with voter integrity or election integrity. Photo ID is about stopping you from voting. That's what it's about. But you know, you should know that Paul Wierich has done this, and they have implemented a program through ALEC, the American Legislative Exchange Council, and they've put these photo ID laws in place in places like Wisconsin and North Carolina. And if you pay attention to the news, you will know that courts have struck these laws down more recently, which is a good thing. But here's the question I have for you. If other people are working so hard to keep you from voting, why are you helping them? Why are we cooperating with the people who want to suppress our voice? Why are we doing this? Muslims in the United States, American Muslims, can practice Islam more freely than we can perhaps anywhere in the world. Anywhere in the world. You know that if you're in Saudi Arabia, it's very hard to be a Shia Muslim. If you're in Iran, it's hard to be a Sunni Muslim. If you're in Pakistan, if you're an Ahmadiyya Muslim, they don't even let you call yourself a Muslim. There are whole sections of this world with the Muslim majority where if you're not the kind of Muslim of the people in power, you cannot practice freely. But in America, you can open a masjid. Some people may not like it, but the law is on our side and we generally win those battles. So if we are blessed with the right to practice our faith, are we not then charged with the responsibility of getting involved, getting active, taking in charge, and sharing our value system with this nation that is our own? Are we not in a position to do all that we can to make sure that this country is one where honesty prevails, where fair business dealing prevails, where respect for the environment prevails, where respect for women prevails, where education prevails? Isn't this our obligation and our responsibility to make sure all people are treated fairly and are not pushed aside because of their color or because of their religion or because of things like this? The Muslim community cannot lock itself inside the masjid and say the world's not our problem. We have to engage this world. We have to share what we've been blessed with this world. And one of the ways we can do it is by voting on November 8th. And I am calling on all of you to cast a vote. And you can vote for whoever you want to. But I'm going to tell you this. If somebody says that they don't like you and they don't like your Hispanic neighbor, that might not be who you want to vote for. But if somebody else isn't exactly thrilling you and you're not really excited, you ought to ask yourself, is it the job of a politician to entertain? Or is it to make sure that the people get what they need? I just want to tell you this. It is very important for the Muslim community to recognize the critical conversation, the critical contribution that we are making around this country. We're making it every day. You are doing an awesome job right here in Irving, Texas. But I want to leave you with this thought. A little bit earlier this year, I happened to be in Ferguson. Anybody ever heard of Ferguson, Missouri? Ferguson, Missouri was where Mike Brown was shot and killed by a police officer. And when Mike Brown was shot and killed, only 12% of the people voted in the previous election. Only 12%. Though the city was 66% African American, there were no African Americans on the city council. So I went down there to help them increase voter turnout. And one of the places that I went was to an African American Baptist church. And when I got to the door, I met an African American pastor. And then when I went into the door a little bit more, I met 3 Muslim Pakistani doctors. And they had a big banner and it said Salam Clinic. And in that clinic, it was people all out the door, a long line for people to get the health care that they were not able to get access to because Missouri, like Texas, their governor denied accepting the Medicaid expansion. And these people needed help and they couldn't get it from their state. And these doctors spent all day long seeing patients, all day long helping people with their blood pressure, their high sugar, all types of problems that they were treating all day long. A Christian minister, Muslim doctors, combining their energies into the Salam Clinic housed within a Baptist church. And then I said to them, you know, brothers, I want to thank you for the great work you did. After Mike Brown was killed, you know, there were these riots, and I just want to say thank you for being able to come together and do this in response to the riots. And they all looked at me and they said, brother, we didn't start this in response to the riots. We've been doing this since 2008. Muslims being caught doing the right thing, combining with other people, meeting the desperate medical needs of people throughout this country. This is the kind of thing we should be doing, that we are doing. You're doing it here in Irving, Texas, but we got to do more of it, brothers and sisters. We got to do more of it. And not only do we need to write letters and write books, not only do we need to do interfaith dialogue and intrafaith dialogue, not only do we need to build wonderful, beautiful masjids like this one, we got to get out there, run for office, and we got to vote, and we got to vote for people who are going to support our interests. And so let me just tell you as I close again, this Democratic National Convention in Philadelphia, was anybody there? Did anybody see it? Let me tell you, you saw it on television? 7 Muslims spoke at the Democratic National Convention. None of them spoke at the Republican one. I spoke at it. Andre Carson was there. Debbie Al-Montasser was there. Kareem Abdul-Jabbar was there. Sherman Jackson was there. And Kazir and Ghazala Khan were there. And they rocked the house, and they definitely stole the show. Did y'all see that? So when they come up there, that Gold Star family lost their son in service to this nation. You cannot tell me that Muslims have not bled and sacrificed for this nation. This is our country. We have a duty to make it the best place we can be, and we can do that with our vote on November 8th. Thank you all very much.
Takbir. Allahu Akbar. Takbir.